So, this happened to me almost 7 years ago now. I should give some background info before getting into things. At the time this all happened, I was around 16 years old, and I had a friend I'll call Karen, who was dating a boy named John. At this point in time, Karen and John had been dating for maybe 6 months, and after going out with Karen and John on many occasions, they decided that they wanted me to hook up with John's friend. We'll call him Cameron. At this point in time, I'd met Cameron in person once. He was nice, so I gave him my social media, and we had chatted a couple of times. It's important to note that he didn't have my number or know where I live. Now it's time for the story. Fast forward to one night, maybe a week or two after I met Cameron. I'm laying in bed. It's about 2 or 3 in the morning, and I get a call from an unknown number. Thinking, why the hell is an unknown number calling me at this time of night? I decide to answer it and see who it is. So I answer the phone and say hi, and the man responds saying hi back. Since I did recognise the voice on the other end, I ask the person who they are. Instead of giving me an answer to the question, the man on the line tells me to look outside my window. Thinking it's probably a prank call, I tell the man to F off and hang up the phone. Once I did this, the number calls back again, and I didn't answer it. The person then proceeds to call me another 4 times until I finally answer the phone, which again I ask who the heck's calling. This time the person responds, and tells me that one of my friends gave him my number, and that I'm the guy he's been talking to. At this point, my stupid 16-year-old mind is trying to rationalise this, and the only person I can think of is Cameron. Before I can say anything to this person, he tells me again to look outside my window, and I begin hearing noises outside. Now, I should mention that my room is right beside my parents' room, and being stupid, my first thought was that this fool was going to wake them up, and I'd never heard the end of it. Let me tell you, that thought soon turned into the last thing I would worry about that night. Anyway, at this point I'm also starting to get creeped out, and thinking to myself, okay, if this is Cameron, and Karen did give him my number, how the hell would he know where I live? So I reply to the man and say, Cameron? The man says yes and tells me to look outside my window. I reply telling him to go home and hang up the phone again. Weirded out, I decide that I'm going to get up and go into my basement and call Karen, so hopefully that my parents don't hear me talking from my room. That is really important because to get to my basement I have to pass the door that is partially made of glass. So I get downstairs and call Karen, and she answers, clearly half asleep. I tell Karen about the unknown call, which I'm assuming is from Cameron, and now he's telling me to look outside my window because he's outside. And on top of this, I can hear that someone's out there. Karen, now clearly awake, tells me that she never gave Cameron my number or address, and calls John quickly from her home phone to see if maybe he did. At this point, John answers and tells Karen that not only did he never give my information out, he is with Cameron. They tell me if someone's outside, that I need to hang up and call the police immediately. So I hang up the phone, and before I can even go to dial for anyone, I get another call. Guess who? Unknown number. So I stupidly answer again, and before I get a word in, the man tells me that he knows I'm in my basement. He saw me walking by my back door. Now I'm clearly disturbed, as I did just walk to my back door to get downstairs, so I know that there's someone outside. Again, before I could say anything, the man tells me to come outside. So stupidly, I tell the person I'm calling the police and hang up the phone. Why I didn't call the police at this point, I really don't know. Probably because I was 16, stupid, and literally in panic mode. Not more than a minute later I get another call. Unknown number. I answer again, and the man tells me to come outside, or he's coming inside to get me. Clearly panicking at this point, I have this deep gut feeling that if I go outside, I'm never coming back. However, I do have to go by the door again to get back upstairs, and that was equally as terrifying to me. So I hang up the phone again, and muster up the courage to run up the stairs, because the last place I wanted to be was in a part of the house where no one else was. I get more calls. Unknown number, unknown number, unknown number. Again, my 16-year-old stupidity answers. This time, the voice on the phone sounds shook and says to me that the police stopped him outside my house and wants to speak to me to make sure I know him. The phone then gets passed off to someone who identifies themselves by name, with some title that I no longer remember, and asks if I know the man outside my address. He says my house number and street. I quickly tell the voice on the phone that I don't have any idea who the person calling me is and hang up the phone. I never got another call again. However, I did sit there all night holding it back and had problems sleeping for months. I should also mention, I didn't have many friends at this point in my life, and looking back on this night, I thought maybe it was a prank taken too far. However, I begged the few friends I did have for months to admit that it was one of them in person who pulled this off, and to this day, they all insist that none of them did it. So, whatever got this person to stop calling me, thank God. And to the unknown caller, let's not meet. This happened almost a year ago, May 2019. I tried keeping it short, but it's still quite long. My post has been removed before, but I believe it fits here. Spoiler, I escaped. I'm a French 20-year-old female, and decided to come work in London after I spent some time in England. I was living in a hood of London with my friends last year, and came back this year to the same street, just a different house. Because of my job, I was waking up at 4:30am, and then waiting for the bus till 5am. The bus station was at the end of my street. I just had to cross the road, and there was one further up as well on the main road, where I sometimes went as well. The week it happened, my bus was late every morning, so I had been waiting for my bus stop for ages every morning reading my book. I'm very cautious, so always keeping an eye around. Apart from drunk people, it's quite quiet. That day, I decided to go later than usual, because I was sure my bus was going to be late going up my street. I noticed two black males next to my usual bus stop. They weren't doing anything, not talking or anything, and something just didn't feel right. For some reason, maybe because my brain noticed many things were wrong, the gloves, the hood, the situation, I decided to go to the other bus stop further up. So instead of crossing the road, I turned left immediately. Seeing that, they crossed the street. It happens that guys offer drugs to buy, so naively, and because I tend to freak out too much, I stayed calm, even though my guts were screaming that I should run. I heard the footsteps of the first male getting closer, almost like he was running, and he shouted something at me. I didn't get what he said, so I turned around hoping I would just decline his drug offer. Pretty sure I smiled. He said something like, "You a foreigner?" Heavy Londonian accent, and managed to push me into the corner of the following street while saying that. I was shitting my pants at this point. After I said yes, he said, "Listen, I've got a gun on me." To which I genuinely answered, "Why would you have a gun on you?" In a high-pitched tone, which I now think was funny. "Give me your money." I don't have any. I thought maybe he'll take me to an ATM and I'll lose a few hundreds, but it could be worse. But no. Instead, he grabbed me with his friend next to me and started pushing me down the street. The street next to my own street, for fuck's sake. While saying all kinds of stuff like, "If you scream, I'll kill you." Are you scared? Of course I'm scared. Almost pissing my pants, and I was thinking, Jesus, you know this isn't going to go anywhere good. You've seen plenty of movies. Do something. But my body just wasn't responding. Another man was going down the street. I looked at him like, please fucking God, just do something. This can't look normal. But he looked confused and went on his way. Halfway up the street, still holding me, he said to his friend, "Open the door." I started looking around frantically, like, is it a car? A house? His friend turned to a house with a key in his hand, and that's where I just lost it and went, "Nope." Literally. I said no. Now in front of the English houses, there's those small walls, so I just grabbed it like my life depended on it, the man still holding me. I started shouting in French and English, suddenly fluent and screaming at the top of my lungs. His friend looked confused and not sure of what he was doing. I thought, that's my chance. The male holding me kept on saying, "I got a gun. Do you want to die? Shut up or I'll kill you." And I was screaming, "There's no way I'm passing that door. I've seen enough shit movies. What is wrong with you? I just want to go to my job. I have a family, for fuck's sake." I was shouting at the other one, "Close the fucking door." And he was, which was unreal. The guy was trying to make me let go of the wall and shouting to his friend to help him, but he wasn't. Thank God for that. Yet, he managed to pull me through the gates. With all fours flying in the air, I grabbed it and teared it down. The whole wall was falling apart with it. Then, I managed to grab the other side of the wall, like the one next to the neighbour's house. I was like 2 meters from the door, my bag and my book on the floor. One of the stones was coming off the wall, and I was thinking, should I try and hit him and make a run for it? But I didn't see myself doing parkour all of a sudden. That's when the lady next door opened, and I screamed, "Call the fucking cops, I'm not going through that door." And the male holding me was like, "You know what you did." To what I responded, still in my high-pitched voice, "The fuck you mean? I haven't done anything." While the other one was like, "I haven't done anything." The lady was looking very confused, and she didn't reach out to help me. Said some confusing shit how she'd called the cops because someone broke into her garden last night. Then I blinked and she was gone. He was holding my throat saying, "Do you want to die? You're a fucking hostage now." And there, I felt it. His heart on my back pounding real fast, and I thought to myself, thank God, he's panicking. I said that I didn't want to see the cops either, that I just wanted to go to my job and read my book. Still holding me tight, he was trying to get me to come at the end of the street. I said I'd rather die than move. I thought it was a shame to die like this, but better than being kidnapped a few houses away from mine. After what felt for forever of him asking me to let go and come to the end of the street, to die, and me saying I wouldn't move, he blurted out, "I just want to fuck you." I said hell no. I talked about how traumatizing that was, but of course, he said he didn't care. Then out of nowhere, after asking me what my job was, he told me to get my book. I said no, you close the door first and you give me my book, which he did. Again, surrealistic. Then my bag, the same. He let go of me and said, "Run." I looked at the both of them and said, "Are you sure?" Scared they would beat me up and shove me inside, I didn't run. I crossed the street, facing them all along the way, and went to the bus stop up the street. Shocking how there were so many people a few meters from all this that didn't hear me scream. I couldn't stop crying. Waiting for my bus, I called my mum and dad. Went to work. My boss told me to go to the police after my shift, which I did. I later learned that there were 20 people in that house. Makes me want to throw up when I think of the what if. I later found out that the lady neighbour never called the police, but things could have been worse if she hadn't made her apparition. So, thanks, I guess. Since that day, I never went back to my room. Just once with my uncle to pick up stuff, and we drove past the house, where the part of the wall I was holding onto was missing. Anyway, I'm alive and safe, far away in France, and I still think about this a lot to this day. Going to the gym, more than ever now. When I was around 6, my parents divorced, and my dad was soon given full custody. As my mum is an alcoholic and had wrapped up a few DUIs and such. Anyway, me, my younger sister and my dad, moved to a neighbourhood and we transferred to the nearby elementary school. The school was pretty close to my new house, maybe 5 to 7 or so blocks away, close enough to walk. But my sister and I, also a girl, were too young to walk home alone. Sometimes our dad would walk us to school in the morning and then walk back, and less commonly, he'd walk to pick us up. Most of the time, he'd pick us up in his black Mazda. The way pickups worked in my school was pretty common. We went out with our class, stood by our teacher and classmates, and when a car pulled up, designated staff members would ask who the student was that they were picking up, and then go to find them with their class and escort them to their car. Seeing as my mum was in jail at this time, the only person who ever picked us up was my dad. One day, I was in 3rd grade and my sister was in 1st. We were outside waiting to be picked up. After being outside for only a few minutes, my little sister came over to me and said someone who wasn't dad was in a car to pick us up. He'd said both our names and they'd found her first. She said he'd smiled at her and told her that our dad had told him to pick us up for that afternoon. But she said she wanted to find me first before she got in the car, since she didn't recognise it. Thank God she did that. Our dad had always told us not to talk to strangers, so I grabbed my teacher and told her what happened. She got a really alarming look on her face, and told us to stay where we were, while she told another teacher or something. Our dad arrived to pick us up a few minutes later, and we got home safely. We told him about it, and we all had a long talk about safety protocol. He asked my sister to describe the man in the car, and he called the police and gave them the best description that he could, although my sister was very young and wasn't very focused on important details like that. A few weeks later it happened again, but this time he said my name. My dad had given the school the same info he'd given the police, but presumably he had multiple vehicles, because my sister said that he'd been in a red car, and this one was black, similar to my dad's. I saw the black car and ran up to it, but luckily, I caught a glimpse of the face before I opened the door and hopped in. He was middle-aged, really pale, with a really angular face. We made eye contact, and his mouth was smiling, but his eyes looked really wrong to me. Squinty, and almost angry. I turned back towards the carpool assistant who delivered me to the car to alert her, but by the time I did, the car was gone, and I couldn't give many details. My dad contacted the police again, but without a license plate, they weren't able to do much. The last time I saw him wasn't until months later, near the end of the school year. I was walking home with a big group of kids that lived in my neighbourhood, and he drove by us and slowed the car down to try and talk to us. I recognised his face immediately, and alerted the other kids to run. Luckily, we were only about 3 houses down from where one of my friends lived, and we all piled into her house, concerning her parents significantly as we explained the situation. I never saw him again after that. My dad started dating my new stepmom, and we moved to her neighbourhood and switched schools shortly after. I still think about him occasionally though. His face was actually in my dream a few nights ago, which reminded me to write about my experience. To this day, I'm in my 20s now. I don't know how he knew our names, how he knew anything about us really. Very fucking scary to think about what would have happened to my tiny little sister if she'd have gotten into the car with the man, and what might have happened to me if I had. To my childhood predator, please, please, let's not meet. This was something that happened over the course of last summer. I'd taken a lot of babysitting jobs when I'm home from college. At the beginning of last summer, a family that I regularly babysat for recommended me to the Smith family with 4 children, aged 18 months, 3, 6 and 10 years old. Mrs. Smith didn't really have any rules for the kids. They could eat whatever they wanted, and she didn't mind if they were glued to the TV all day. She even encouraged me to bring my laptop and spend the time working on my summer classes if I needed to. I was to stay with them 3 days a week from 8 AM to around 7 PM. The only rule that Mrs. Smith ever had was to never let them play in the front yard. She explained to me that the people across the street had a son, about my age, that lived at home. She didn't know much about him or his family, but she said there had been multiple instances of him trying to talk to the kids, and something about him really freaked her out. If that was my only rule, I figured this would be easy enough. I loved the kids, but the oldest one seemed to be always causing trouble. She was too old to be misbehaving in the way she did, and it drove me nuts. The 5-year-old had some sensory issues that would cause her to have really bad meltdowns if she got too overwhelmed, and the 10-year-old loved to provoke her. Luckily, I didn't have to deal with the 10-year-old too much, because she kept to herself for the most part. Anyway, I quickly began to understand what Mrs. Smith was talking about regarding the guy across the street. He hardly ever left the house, and I knew because she had pointed out which car was his. I'd sometimes look out the window to see him standing in his driveway just looking at the Smith's house. Mrs. Smith would always have me pick up the packages from the front porch and bring them inside. One day, I apparently hadn't realised the mailman had left a package, and I heard a knock on the door. When I looked through the peephole, the guy was standing on the porch holding a package in his hand. Though the kids were in the fenced backyard, I still didn't feel comfortable answering the door, and I figured Mrs. Smith would rather have a stolen package than anything happen to me or the kids. I was anxious for him to leave, but he stood there knocking for nearly 15 minutes. Still, I didn't open the door, and he eventually did return to his house across the street, leaving the package on the porch. I insisted that the kids spend the rest of the afternoon inside, as I was afraid he would try to get into the backyard. There were other little weird instances too. Every day that I left, the kids would all stand on the porch, waving and saying goodbye right before I drove away. There were 2 times towards the end of the summer, that the guy would see this and start crossing the street and trying to talk to the kids, who were quickly pulled into the house by Mr. Smith. I knew this wasn't uncommon, and Mrs. Smith had mentioned to me that they had allowed the kids to play outside when they first moved into the house, only for them to find a guy talking to them in the yard. My last time babysitting for them before I moved back to school, I experienced the scariest incident I'd ever had while babysitting. It was around 1, and the kids had finished eating lunch. For a while, I had all 4 of them in the living room and they were all running around chasing each other. After about 20 minutes, I realised that I'd lost track of the 10-year-old. I don't know why I was concerned, because she usually spent the afternoon in her room, but I decided to go check. She wasn't there. In fact, she wasn't anywhere in the house. I checked every room, the front yard and the backyard, figuring she was hiding from me to be funny. I'm panicking at this point and the kids are picking up on it. I make one more round through the house, in its perimeter, screaming 10-year-old's name. If you're hiding somewhere, you need to come out or I'm calling 911. This isn't funny and I'm calling the police right now. No answer. I immediately gather the kids around me and call my mum, crying and explaining that one of the kids is gone. She knew about the guy across the street, and she was just as terrified as I was that my worst fear had been confirmed. She instructs me to call Mrs. Smith and asks me if there's anywhere she could be. When I do, Mrs. Smith is irritated and tells me to go to the garage, where I put the phone on speaker. I figured this was a waste of time, as I'd already thoroughly searched the garage. However, after about 5 minutes of Mrs. Smith screaming over the phone that she needs to come out now, the 10-year-old appears from a moving box at the bottom of a pile of these boxes that was as high as the ceiling, laughing her head off like it was funny. Mrs. Smith assured me that she'd be punished for what happened, but I knew that if this hadn't been my last time babysitting for them, I probably wouldn't have come back. Anticlimactic, right? Well, 2 weeks after I moved back to school, Mrs. Smith texted me to inform me that the guy across the street had been arrested for an encounter he'd had with another child down the street, and to thank me for keeping the kids safe. She didn't give me any details, but my blood ran cold. I'd felt bad after the incident with the 10-year-old for believing that the guy could have done something to her, but as it turned out, he was capable of it, and he just hadn't gotten the chance to do anything with the Smith kids. So, creepy guy across the street from the Smiths? Let's not be. And more importantly, stay the hell away from the Smith kids. I've recently posted another encounter here on Let's Not Meet in regard to something I experienced when working for one of my uncle's businesses, and coincidentally, he ended up calling me this morning. I told him about this subreddit and then subsequently explained what Reddit was, and that's when he chose to share this encounter with me. This is all verbatim, and it's not exactly a short story, so I appreciate that it may trail off at some points, but I wanted to stay true to my uncle's account, hence why it's word for word. Understandably, this will irritate some readers. The following is all from my uncle's perspective, and the use of I's refers to himself. This would have happened around 20 odd years ago, very long time ago now, and it's when your father and I ran that call centre doing the contracting work for various businesses, all within the financial services industry, and roughly around 50 staff, including managers and supervisors, and so on and so on. Things were a lot different then. The internet was still very much in its infancy, as was technology. We didn't have the same access to things as you would do now if you ran the same kind of operation. On top of this, we were running all of this out of a warehouse on an industrial estate, right next to a gypsy camp, because that's all we could afford for the amount of floor space we needed. The campaign we were working on wasn't going so well for us. For the most part, we just worked out of phone books, and the likes to get leads as data cost, and still does cost a fortune. So we were under a lot of stress to meet the sorts of deadlines and promises that your father made to our B2B clients. So we weren't in a great place. We were facing the possibility of cutting the staff down to at most 20 agents with 2 managers. And that's when we met Kevin. We heard of him from a few associates who ran similar operations as ourselves as someone who could provide leads and generally had the ability to turn companies around. So your dad got in contact with him, and we went from there really. We didn't actually hear back for about a month after contacting him, so we were very much in the mindset of, well, we'll fuck all this over, close down and start something else somewhere else. And on the day, we hyped ourselves up to tell everyone, you've all lost your jobs. We get a fucking phone call out of the blue. Who's on the phone? Kevin. Long story short, we discussed his situation, gauged his interest and dressed things up with a little bow on top to perk him up. And by the end of the call, he'd agreed to come down from Scotland to meet with us and discuss options in person. So on the Monday, we meet with Kevin in the Hilton, and I didn't like him instantly. I thought he was overbearing, condescending, and a complete egomaniac. But your father, in his infinite wisdom, decided to hear him out, and it turned out that Kevin had a huge amount of leads from one of his sources in America and needed a team of salespeople to dial them. We'd need to supply 25 agents, and in return, we'd get a fat back-end payment which would allow us to move premises, upgrade equipment, etc. So we agreed, and a contract was written up, and we began our venture. In order to maintain a more hands-on approach to the business and to keep his contacts in the US happy, Kevin rented a flat close to the office, and would often visit the office to monitor progress, which would normally consist of him lurking around with a coffee. It's also important to mention that Kevin had next to no people skills, and struck me as either socially awkward, or maybe somewhere on the autism spectrum, or something. And soon enough, we began to get complaints from some of our younger female staff members that Kevin would watch them too closely and hover around the women's bathroom, which, of course, we had to take seriously. But we weren't really in the position to piss the guy off, who was potentially our saviour. So we would begin to hold bullshit meetings every time he showed up to get him off the floor, and into the meeting room, which for a time worked, but eventually he'd have to take a phone call halfway through and excuse himself. I later learned from one of the managers that he would hold the phone up to his ears and just watch the girls closely, not saying anything, and then follow them into the makeshift kitchen area and press himself up against them, or at least stand very close to them, to make them have to ask him to move or brush past him. We decided to hold a meeting with the female members of staff to ask them about their concerns, and to ask them if there's anything we could do to make their time at work more enjoyable, deliberately not mentioning Kevin, just to test the waters, and one by one, they all had something to say about Kevin. Some were just uncomfortable with his general demeanour, and some had been groped by him, and even propositioned, which was the final straw really. So we decided to speak to Kevin, and cut ties and look at ways to exit the contract, when we get an email from Kevin saying that he's moving back up to Scotland, and will only be making quarterly visits. So we're understandably ecstatic that our lead source remains, but contact with staff will be limited, and we believe that no more problems shall arise, and we can wear the caring boss hats who valiantly drove away a sex pest, which would no doubt boost staff morale. Fast forward another 12 months, and Kevin's visits have all been non-eventful, and the contract is drawing to a close, and we're excited to get our cut and to expand and move on to another primary contract, when Kevin gets in touch with another plan to extend our contract and package our company up to be sold to a blue chip company which specialises in the financial service industry. He'd act as a broker and take a cut, but we'd make even more money than we originally thought, as well as half the agreed amount we'd receive when this particular contract was supposed to end, just as a goodwill gesture. He mentioned he had a few contracts in London and the US, which would be interested in merging our operation into their current sales team for a more dynamic sales approach. So this was something to ponder on, and we agreed to get back to him. Anyway, I was thinking over the idea and decided to go to the local pub, where I ran into a guy called Carl, who also ran a similar business as myself, and we got chatting and he brought up Kevin, saying something along the lines of, "You're working with Kevin Smith, are you?" And unsure to how he knew that, I asked him, "Why? Why do you want to know?" To which he responded with, "That guy is a total fucking nutcase, mate. Honestly, the things I could tell you about him." And at first, I thought, here we go, this is just more gossip and BS, and most likely jealousy. But curiosity got the better of me, and I asked, "Go on then, why is he a nutter?" And he laughed some more, took another few sips of his lager, and off the cuff said, "You know that geezer murdered his wife, yeah?" And admittedly I scoffed, but Carl's face was serious, stone-like and unsmiling. "No he didn't," I said, still laughing. "He killed his wife, mate. I won't make that up." I can always remember the look in his eyes when he told me that. I was unnerved, but still, you can't believe anyone in business, and I decided to probe him some more. "What happened?" I asked, or something to that effect. I don't know the whole story because he's kept it very quiet. You won't find it in the papers or on the news or anything, but basically his wife was found battered, no signs of a break-in, and the only other DNA in the house was his. He's a wealthy guy though. Never got out in the press and he managed to get off, but I tell you, it's a dodgy bloke. We had him with us in '98, and we exited out of our contract. Got a lot of complaints about him. He's a perv, mate. So, I'm thinking, oh bollocks. We have a murderer as our main source of income, and the guy's off his rocker. But I don't let on to Carl, and instead tell your dad, and he says, he's fine, he's eccentric, he's from a different era, and we should just hold on a little bit longer. You know what your dad's like, he's got the moral compass of a bloody war criminal. But stupidly, I relented and we entered the new contract. And true to his word, we received half of the original agreed commission fee, so we were able to move offices. And this is when Kevin decided to move back down south and take permanent residency at our new office to oversee the packaging process. So he set himself up in an office opposite the hallway to the women's bathroom and would spend most of his days on the phone or just loitering again. By that time, we had a major staff overhaul and employed more skilled salespeople and management staff, so we were confident that Kevin would behave and we wouldn't have a repeat of last time. But unfortunately, this was short-lived, as an admin assistant complained to HR that she saw Kevin having some alone time in his car outside while watching some of the girls who'd go outside to smoke. Obviously, this kick-started the rumours of Kevin being a wrong'un again, and his odd behaviour did nothing to help that. So we decided to seek legal help, and eventually we were able to back out the contract. Kevin in our minds was long gone, and it would have been in early 2003, when I was working late at the office alone, when I saw a figure moving through the office towards my enclosed office at the back. I knew it wasn't security or the cleaners, as security weren't permitted to enter the offices without permission when a staff member was present, and the cleaners had left earlier. Besides which, the cleaner we had was this rake-thin Asian woman, and this figure, which was now barreling towards me, was much larger in both height and width. I stood up and moved towards the door to lock it when I saw Kevin's face on the other side. Now, Kevin was a big guy, probably about 22 stone and around 6'4", and I must have been around 12 stone and 6'1", so he easily pushed back and bashed through the door. I can remember going for the phone to dial security when he got on top of me, and instead of the beating that I was expecting, he was trying to pull the watch off from around my wrist. Confused, but understandably pissed, I tried to get him off me, but his weight was making it difficult to move, and I just remember looking at him dead in the face without saying anything, eyes completely blank. Somehow I managed to get him off of me. I think I managed to knee him or something, and ran out to the reception area, where I got security to apprehend Kevin, who was attempting to escape out of the fire exit. I wasn't hurt or anything, and I didn't press charges, and he got a warning from the police, and that was the last time I saw Kevin. Now, this is when things get bizarre. About 3 years ago, I bumped into Carl in Monaco, and we got talking about the old days when the topic of Crazy Kevin came up, and I told him about the last time he came to my office, jumped on me, and tried nicking my Rolex. And Carl was laughing along with me, and asked when exactly that was. I told him it was in '03, and this is what he said. I can still remember it word for word. That couldn't have been long before he topped himself then. Shocked, naturally I asked him to repeat what he said, and he did. He hanged himself in '03. Had no money at the end. I'm not sure if he told you, but he remarried to this Thai girl who had a son. When he was liable to settle his contract with the American chaps, he tried bumping her off to get life insurance money. Everything he had was on finance. Everything. Didn't own anything. I was completely gobsmacked. Kevin never even wore a wedding ring, and in all those years I've known him, we never once discussed a wife or children. And although Carl is a bit of a shit stirrer, turns out Kevin rented a house opposite Carl's brother-in-law. I'll tell you what, makes the stories about his first wife seem even more plausible. I've also worked out why he went for my wrist. I think at first he was angry that we backed out of the contract, and he probably viewed us as responsible for his life spiralling out of control, so I probably did want to beat the shit out of me. But I think the fact he had no money and probably needed it quick to settle the contract and impending lawsuits, he decided to try and steal my watch to pawn it, the bastard. This is just my theory though, and he could have been off his tits. That was the end of the conversation. I know some of you may find that hard to read or listen to due to the length, and the fact that my uncle can trail off at some points, but I thought I'd share it word for word with you, as it adds more to the story. I've changed the name of the guy in question as well as for my uncle's friend, for anonymity purposes. It's a strange one, and if any of you have any questions about it, please comment, and I'll call my uncle with any questions. When I was about 11 years old, my parents left me in the care of my grandmother and aunt. I never had any freedom with my parents, even though I was very young. They didn't let me have playdates with my friends. When they left, I had a lot more freedom. A couple of years passed. When I was around 16 years old, I started talking to this boy. Even though I had a lot more freedom, I wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend. We'll call him Daniel. I met Daniel at a grad party for one of my cousins. He added me on Facebook and we started talking. I gave him my number, and we talked from morning to night for about a week. This is because I had to go visit my parents. They live in a different country and there is no cell phone reception where they live, so I had to let him know. He's okay with it. I left for 2 months, and when I came back we started talking again. I used to have a bad habit for feeling bad for people. Too much empathy. I would always think the best of someone and give them the benefit of the doubt. I had heard many things, and just brushed it off as people spreading rumours. To this day, I regret not listening to what those people had to say. Since my grandma was so strict, he snuck into my room through my window a couple of times. He was small enough to fit through it. We only dated for about 2 weeks before I started to notice some red flags. First, I noticed that he was drinking and smoking a lot, to the point where he wouldn't remember anything the next day. Then he started texting and hanging out with this one girl. I told him I didn't like that, and he said he didn't really care. I kind of let it go, and someone told him that I had cheated on him with someone. He's not too important, but we'll call him Kevin. These things weren't true. Something snapped in him, and he started calling me like crazy and picked a fight with Kevin. He texted me, telling me what had happened, and I broke it off with Daniel. I'm a very, very light sleeper. The smallest noises wake me up. A week later, I woke up around 2 AM to the sound of my phone ringing over and over. I had about 12 messages from the girl that Daniel had been hanging out with. She was trying to pick a fight with me. I was really tired and awoken from my slumber, so I responded back. And I understand. Don't fight fire with fire. But I did. I said some really mean things to her because she had, 1, woken me up, and 2, tried to confront me for things I didn't do. I silenced my phone and went back to sleep. I woke up to so many messages from Daniel asking me why I went out of my way to fight with her. I didn't answer because I was over it and just left him on read. This angered him. He continued to call and send me messages, so I blocked him. I thought this was the end of it, but it wasn't. There was a party near my house, and he happened to go. I knew about the party, but I didn't want to go, not because he would be there, but because I was tired and wanted to sleep. Around 1 AM, I heard something at my window, and I heard it slide open. I was terrified and saw a dark figure crawl inside. I keep my phone near me at all times, and I'm thankful for that because I immediately turned on my flash and saw that it was Daniel. I then remembered that I forgot to lock my window that day. I asked him what the hell he was doing, and he told me he needed to talk to me. I tried to remain calm because he was severely intoxicated. In a hushed voice, I told him to get out because I didn't want to speak with him. I was trying not to wake anyone. I didn't know what to do. He asked if he could just sleep, and I reluctantly agreed. Not because I felt bad, but because he was drunk and I was afraid of what he would do if he got mad. I pretended to sleep and he tried to wake me. When I didn't give him any attention, he left and I locked my window right after. I didn't tell anyone because I was scared that I'd be in trouble. A couple of weeks passed and I didn't hear anything from him. I thought that maybe he'd moved on. I was over my aunt's house with my cousins. We were always close and hang out as often as we can. It was around 11 PM and I heard my phone ring. I thought it was my grandma calling to make sure I was okay, but it was a random unknown number. I didn't pick up because my cousins and I were playing a game. A couple of seconds later it rang again and it was the same number. I didn't answer. This happened 2 more times before I finally picked up. "Where are you?" I heard the voice say, and I quickly connected it to Daniel's distinct high-pitched voice. I told him it's none of your business and I hung up. A few weeks later I received a message from a random number. He soon told me that it was Daniel. This was the 3rd number he got because I kept blocking him. He told me that he joined a gang and that he had a gun and a knife. That message terrified me and made my blood run cold. I messaged one of his friends to make sure that someone knew what was going on and to get him to stop. He was very concerned for my safety and put a quick stop to it. Daniel is 5'2" and about 135 pounds. His friend, 6'1" and 190 pounds and could easily overpower him. The messages stopped for a while. 6 months passed and I didn't hear anything from him. One day my cousins and I decided to go to a carnival near my house, after we stopped by a birthday party that we had been invited to. I walked in saying hi to everyone. I looked up and saw him, which made me extremely uncomfortable. I was only there for about 3 minutes. I only wanted to drop off the gift and leave. The next morning I went over to my aunt's house again, and found out that Daniel had gotten so drunk to the point where he was crying and screaming my name to everyone. My family saw it as an innocent thing, but little did they know what was actually going on. I finally decided to tell my aunt about what was going on, and tried to file a restraining order against him, but was denied because we didn't have succinct evidence that he was a danger to me. Something like that. His mum tried to turn it against me, and said that it was my fault that he was obsessed with me and threatened me. I found out the reason he had called me that one day, asking where I was. It was because he had broken into my room and was looking for me. I'm thankful that my cousins decided to hang out that day, because who knows what he could have done that day. He has tried to pick fights with my boyfriend and female cousins several times. The police don't help either, because they think we don't have sufficient evidence to file a restraining order, even after all these incidents. A couple of years passed, and that friend that helped me when I was scared of him just texted me to catch up, and it turns out that Daniel stole his phone to text me. I know this because he told me that he had done that. I couldn't get away from him either because he lived so close to me. I recently found out that he did the same thing to another girl, and she was able to successfully file a restraining order against him. Things have stopped, and I've avoided every event that he's present at. I don't understand why he got so obsessed. We dated for less than a month and didn't do anything significant. So, to my crazy ex-boyfriend, let's not meet again. My best friend and I went to Walmart one day to get groceries for a mum. We walk in and start grabbing produce on the list when I noticed a strange man standing right by the front door and staring. It gave me the creeps, but overall I thought he was just a weird man. I live in Southern California, and they're everywhere. About 6'3" Hispanic, and wearing a Ducks sweatshirt. As I was grabbing some potatoes, he comes uncomfortably close to me and looks at potatoes too. I walk away and go to my friend, who is 20 feet away from me. I still don't mention this man to my friend, cause I thought he just had no clue of keeping a good social distance between people. We finally made our way to the soup aisle, and here he comes, walking down the aisle right in between me and my best friend to look at a chicken broth. I tell my friend that we need to go and grab some other things, so we leave the aisle and I give her the rundown on how I believe this man is following me. She agrees that she's seen it and feels weird energy about it. We head over to the tampon section, because my friend needed some. I'm standing at our car and she's squatted down on the ground, when this man comes up and squats right down next to her, looking at pads and tampons. This made us feel extremely awkward, so we left immediately and went to the back of the store to see if he was actually stalking us. We noticed that in his basket, he had nothing but a bottle of Sprite, yet he's been down so many food and item aisles with us that he should have grabbed something if he was just a normal shopper. We wait about 5 minutes in the back of the Walmart, where we start to walk to the front, and we see him walking the opposite way as us, peering down each and every aisle. Once he sees us, he just stops and pretends to look at something on a side aisle while keeping eye contact on us. My friend and I went into the makeup section. If you know a ghetto Walmart, you know it's blocked with only one way in and one way out with a lot of cameras. We go in here and look through one of the aisles to see him still searching for us. We start to kind of freak out because we both aren't the strongest girls and know that he could probably take us if it came down to that. We decide to hurry up and get in line to check out. I was talking to my best friend facing away from the cashier when he gets in the line right behind us. She did the most ballsy thing I have ever seen and told him off. She was saying how he was following us and that he went down every aisle that we did, but he only has a bottle of Sprite in his basket. Soon after, he scarcely walks away, which made us feel uneasy. We didn't know if he was going to be waiting outside for us, or have him and some friends ready to get us. We went to a worker and told them to keep their eye out for this guy. After we check out, we quickly make our way over to our car with my friend's taser ready to zap. We made it back safely to the car, and haven't seen him since our interaction. Hopefully, I never meet this guy again. When I was 18, I was living in a small town. I was friends with the rice skaters around, and they helped connect with this dude who sold weed. He was 29 at the time, and gave me pretty good deals, and I lived nearby. I wasn't driving at the time, so this was convenient for me. His name was Max. Max has always struck me as a weird dude, but I honestly quite liked his weirdness. Not in a romantic way or anything, but I like weird people. We had normal weed buying interactions that never lasted more than 10 minutes. Buy some weed, maybe smoke a bowl. That's it. He'd often tell me he could drop off at my house, but I never let him because, as I said before, he was weird. I wasn't afraid of him, but was definitely aware that he and his offers to deliver were weird. One day in May 2018, I was invited to a bonfire by the same rice skaters that introduced me to this guy. I had no idea he'd be there, nor was it important to me at all. I brought the guy I was dating at the time. I said hey to everyone, including Max. We stayed for a couple of hours, and some of them played music on their guitars. Nearing the time I was leaving the bonfire, around 11 PM, Max was getting upset about something and threw his guitar into the bonfire. I didn't know what he was angry or upset about, and paid no mind to it. This happened as I was leaving with the guy I was dating. I went to bed, and woke up to paragraphs on paragraphs of crazy text from Max, ranging from 1 AM to 5 AM. Like a constant stream of text, stating things such as, "You know how much I loved you. You are a cruel cunt." He would go back and forth between saying, "I would give you the world if you'd let me, and you really do deserve it though." He said really scary things like, "You are a predator, and you should be snubbed out. Just wait, winky face." And, "You are stuck. I will either love you or hate you to the fullest extent my powers behold. Right now, I pay the worst death on you, and that fuckboy bitch." To top it all off, he said losing you is like losing a mother to me, and told me to tell him I never loved him, and that I wouldn't hear from him again if I did. So that's what I did. I said, "I never loved you, do not message me again," and left it at that. I didn't get a response, nor did I care to get one. Max had never expressed any romantic interest, asked me out, or anything. This was all out of nowhere, and he was 11 years older than me. I was barely 18. That night, he cut his long hair off and posted photos naked on Facebook, curled up in a fetal position, talking about being a statue of shame. It's as if he had a breakdown. But I had no intention of causing that, and didn't think I would offend anyone by bringing the guy I was seeing. Everyone else seemed to like the guy I brought. About a week later, Max texted me pretty late at night and asked if I had seen the flowers he spread along my sidewalk, saying that he stole every flower in the vicinity of my neighbourhood that night. I asked how he knew where I lived, and said I hadn't seen the flowers, so he must have been at the wrong house. I also told him he shouldn't do that, as I never felt anything for him, and so on. He told me that he had heard I lived on the same block as another one of the skater guys we were both friends with, and he wasn't wrong. The skater guy I lived by was on the other side of the block, and I never walked that way, so I never saw the flowers. I blocked his number and didn't hear from him again for weeks. Weeks later, I woke up after a rough night, and there were loads of flowers on the sidewalk right outside my house, along with a little bouquet at the top of my walkway. I was pissed. I wasn't scared yet, and stupidly, I unblocked his number and texted him asking why the fuck there were flowers outside my house. This confirmed that this indeed was where I lived. I still to this day feel so stupid for texting him and making it known that after weeks he had found my house. He responded saying, "Sounds nice. Trust me." I bitched out basically and blocked his number again. About a week later, I was out of town, and my roommate texted me a photo of a heart with a peace sign inside of it, and my name written under it drawn in chalk outside our house. When I got back into town, I went to the courthouse and began the process of getting a stalker order against him. When I left the courthouse, I went to Max's work and told him he needed to stop this behaviour, and that he was stalking me. He looked me in the eyes with no facial expression and said, "If you don't leave, I am calling the cops." I got angry and said loudly, "Call the cops, I was just talking to them about you," and left his work in rage. Soon after this, I began driving again. I once drove by him and he noticed it was me. The next day, I woke up with my car covered in flowers. I presented my case to the judge, and she put the stalking order in place. He was served with it by police officers, and I thought that was that and he wouldn't be bothering me again. I was wrong. After the stalking order was served, he made several other chalk messages on my sidewalk, left random gifts for me like chalk, and beheaded My Little Ponies on beer balls. I always brought these things to the police station, but they said I needed to catch him doing it, take a photo, or get a security camera. So I got a security camera, and I really hoped I would catch him. It turned out my security camera was stupid, and I couldn't just watch the videos it took, but had to skip through second by hand. It was an impossible task. I was terrified of leaving my house at night at this point. I never had my curtains open anymore, and I was so frustrated that my livelihood was being taken away from me. Ultimately, I unblocked his number, in hopes that he would text me directly violating the stalking order. And after a few days, it worked. He sent me a weird text saying something like, "Forgive me, we are charming, this is harming, let us try again." By now, it's September 2019, and he finally goes to jail. He is facing up to a year in jail, and has to stay there until our court date. I finally start calming down. I'm able to go outside at night, even if just to get into my car. I let myself have my curtains open sometimes. I'm starting to feel alive again. Right when I start feeling secure in my small town life again, someone posted bail, and he was released after only 3 months in jail, and I went back to living in fear. We still had court dates coming up, and I was optimistic that he would serve more time for ruining my life for so long. His lawyer kept pushing the court date back to gather evidence, and after about 6 months of pushing it back, the state decided he wouldn't do anything more, and closed the case basically. I had moved out of town 3+ hours away at this point, so he didn't actually have an option to continue his behaviour. Living in this new place, I feel safe. I can walk at night and don't have to have my curtains closed all the time. It's been over a year since I decided to close the case. About a month ago, he began responding to my friends' Instagram stories, friends that live here in this new town, telling them how fond he is of me, etc. I have always had him blocked, but my Instagram isn't private, so he must have found him that way. I have since changed my account to private, and he hasn't messaged any more of my friends. I refuse to be fearful now, the way I was then. He will never find where I live, or where I work now. However, my life is forever changed after this experience. I will always be more aware of people and their weird energy. I will always close my curtains early in the evening, and make sure all the windows and doors are locked. I will always live a little bit in fear, maybe not of him, but of it happening again. He ruined my life for a year, and I truly wish he had gotten that time in jail. He deserves it. So, Max, let's never meet again. Edit. When I say they closed the case, this means we had no further court dates, and he wasn't sentenced to a year. He was served with a stalking order, which is stated earlier in the story. The stalking order is permanently in place. This was not part of the case that was closed. I said case closed for lack of knowledge of a better term for this. For some context, I was a 17-year-old girl in college at the time of this story. One semester, I had this awesome schedule, wherein I didn't have the class every Friday, so I usually spent that day hanging out with my then boyfriend. On this particular Friday, I had to meet my friends at school for group work. Probably 2 hours later, we were done, and I spent the rest of the day with my boyfriend. My boyfriend couldn't send me home, because he had an important thing to attend at 6 PM, so he dropped me off at this particular mall around 5 PM. I already told my dad beforehand to pick me up after he got off of work. My dad agreed, so I waited. I walked around, like any teenager, but unfortunately, my period started, and I had the worst cramps ever. The kind of cramps that rendered me immobile. I was on the second floor, and I spotted a bench on the ground floor. Now, this bench was beside the mall fountain, and about 50 steps from an entrance or exit. My dad usually picked me up from this entrance, so I assumed, wish I'd have asked, that he would pick me up from there. I went down the escalator, and I noticed a man hanging around the railings, just admiring the fountain. I didn't care too much, cause a lot of people do that. I finally settled down because my cramps were getting worse. Mind you, a lot of people were hanging around this area. It was fairly crowded, so I didn't feel off just sitting there alone. I didn't feel too good, so sitting there at that time sounded like a good idea. I played a game on my phone to pass the time. After a few minutes of sitting down, probably around 15 minutes or so, this middle-aged man sat beside me. I looked at him, and I realised that it was the same guy checking out the fountain. This bench was long, and no one was sitting on the other side. Being naive, I didn't say anything and just ignored him. He then started talking to me. "What's your name?" I smiled, cause I didn't want to be rude, and answered with some fake name. Then he asked what I was doing, which I answered, just playing a game. Then he said, "Can you show me how to play?" I smiled nervously and just stopped playing. I started looking around, tapping my foot out of anxiety. Then he started saying stuff like, "You know, I have money. I worked really hard to save up. And you're pretty young, so you got to start saving up all you can. And also, I know I don't look like much, but my account says otherwise." Mind you, I didn't even ask him anything. He just kept rambling about his money. Gradually, he got closer. Then he asked, "So, do you have a boyfriend?" I replied, "Yeah, I do. He's on his way right now." Then he said, "A pretty girl like you shouldn't be waiting this long. Let me take you home." When he started saying these things, my heart started to race. I nervously laughed and said, "No thanks, he's on his way." Then he said, "Where do you live? I'll take you there. I don't mind spending for you." I kept trying to maintain a distance between us, but he kept inching closer to me. And then he said, "You know, I don't have a lot of money, but I can give you the whole world." I was getting so scared that I stood up and started walking away. Unfortunately, this man started following me. I picked up the pace and started brisk walking at this point, and he did too. I saw a mall guard by the entrance of the mall, so I ran to him and just stood beside him. He was probably confused, but didn't say anything. Unfortunately, the sight of the mall guard didn't exactly deter him. He stood by this pillar across me and just waited. I was so determined not to leave the mall guard, who was busy inspecting bags. The man probably waited for 3 minutes before he walked up to me. At this point, I was in tears. Like, why wouldn't he leave me alone? He walked up to me, grabbed my hand and kissed me on the cheek. He said, "It was nice meeting you," fake name, and walked away. I started crying at this point, and the small guard asked me if I knew the guy. He asked me several questions, and said he didn't intervene because he thought I knew him. He noticed I was extremely uncomfortable, and asked if I wanted to give a statement with their head mall guard. The mall guard was able to take a good look at the old man, and wanted to do some sketch so other guards would be alerted. I declined since my dad arrived, and was waiting for me in another entrance, at the opposite side of where I was. The security guard let me go, and I ran so fast to where my dad was waiting. I never told my parents because I was scared that they'd get mad. I'm 26 now, and I still walk around that mall alone, but I never sit on the back of that bench in fear that that guy is still lurking around. To the mall stalker, let's not meet again. Well, anyway guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed them, please like, share and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check out my other Let's Not Me's. They'll be linked in a playlist in the description below for you guys, just in case you want to check them out and see the other stories that I've got on my channel. Now, it's been a long time since I've done a Let's Not Me, and I'm not doing this one to say that I'll be bringing them back fully. But right now, I'm thinking, you know what, let's have a variety on my channel. So I'll try and put these out as regularly as possible, but I can't promise anything. Well, anyway, I hope to see you soon, and I'll speak to you later.